But Darine's frame of reference suddenly became huger than the whole Earth and the space that contained it, so that her planet seemed only one moving, whirling point, plunging along its path through a terrible complexity of forces, among which gravity was a puny local thing and not to be regarded. Up was some other way now. Down had nothing to do with the floor. Her stomach rebelled, and her eyes were seeing things they had never been made to see. Lines and sparks and traces of white fire seemed to tear through her head from her eyes to the back of her skull. They pinned her to the rolling earth like a feebly fluttering moth to a card. A terrible silence, with a deadly sea roar at the bottom of it, more terrible than the stillness of her oath-taking, flattened her down with its sheer, cold ancientness, a vast weight of years without sound or light or life. Cosmic rays, she thought desperately, clutching at reason. Faster than light particles. Maybe that's what the light is. But the dark, it's death. Death itself. I'm going to die. And the wizardry let her go. Darine got shakily to her feet. As she got up, stones and gravel crunched under her sneakers instead of tile floor. The sound went through her in a rush of adrenaline as fierce as fire. Her vision cleared. Red wasteland stretched away under a cold rose sun. A violet sky arched over her. The wind sang chill. She turned slowly, looking around. High up in the cold violet day, something small and bright fled across the sky, changing phase as it did so. Deimos, Darine whispered. Or maybe it was Phobos, the other of Mars's 2 little moons. Whichever it was, it went through half its month in a few minutes, sliding down toward the horizon and behind something that stood up from it. It was a mountain peak, upraised as if on a pedestal, and so tall that though it came up from far behind the foreshortened horizon, its broad, flat base spanned half that horizon easily. "What is that?" she said. "Syntax error 24, said the apple dispassionately. "Rephrase for precision." "That mountain, what is it? Identify." "In Earth IAU nomenclature, Olympus Mons." Darine took in a sharp breath. It was an ancient volcano, long extinct, and the highest mountain in the solar system. "How do I get up there?" "Reference short transit utilities." She did. 5 minutes later, she stood in a place where the wind no longer sang, for it was too thin to do so, where carbon dioxide lay frozen on the rust-red stones, and the fringes of her protective shell of air shed a constant snow of dry ice and water vapor as she moved, a place from which she could see the curvature of the planet. Darine stood 12 miles high atop Olympus Mons, on the ridge of its great crater into which Central Park could have been dropped entire, and looked out over the curve of the red world at what no non-wizardly child of Earth had seen with her or his own eyes before. The asteroid belt, rising like a chain of scattered stars, and beyond it, the tiniest possible disk, remote but clear. "Jupiter," she whispered, and turned around to look for Earth. From here it would look like a morning or evening star, just a shade less bright than Venus. But in mid-movement, she was distracted. There was something down in the mile-deep crater, a little light that shone. "What's that?" she said, holding up the apple. "Syntax error 24. Yeah, right. That light! Identify." "A marker beacon. Provenance uncertain at this range." "Get us down there!" With Darine's help, it did. Shortly, she was staring at a pole with a light on it, streamlined and modern-looking, made of some dark blue metal she couldn't identify. Set in the ground beside the pole was a plate of dull red metal with strange markings on it. "What's it say?" "Error trap 18, sense of query, semantic value?" "Right." "First, untranslatable, climbing expedition. Ascent of, untranslatable proper name. From, date uncertain, 2. Date uncertain. We were here. Signed. Untranslatable proper name. Untranslatable proper name. Untranslatable proper name. People, Dairine whispered. Affirmative. She looked up at the stars in the hard violet sky. I want to go where they came from. Reference transit utility. She did, and spent some minutes tapping busily at the keys. In the middle of it, selecting coordinates, delightedly reading through planet names, she stopped and bit her lip. This is going to take longer than an hour, she said to herself. Come to think of it, she might want to be away for quite some time. And seeing all the problems Nita had started having with their folks when she told them she was a wizard, it wouldn't do for Dairine to let them know that she was one too. Not just yet. She thought about this, then got out of the transit utility and brought up the directory again, taking more time with it, examining the program menus with great care. In particular, she spent a great deal of time with the copy and hide utilities, getting to know their ins and outs, and doing one finicky piece of copying as a test. The test worked. She sent the copy home. That should do it, she said, got back into the transit utility, and with the program's prompting started to lay in coordinates. Darth Vader, she muttered under her breath, look out. Here I come. Shortly thereafter, there was nothing on Olympus Mons but rocks and dry ice snow, and far down in the crater, the single blinking light. Search and retrieval. We're dead, Nita mourned, sitting on the planetarium steps with her head in her hands. Dead. My mother will kill me. Kit, sitting beside her, looked more bemused than upset. Do you know how much power it takes to open a gateway like that and leave it open? Usually it's all we can do to keep one open long enough to jump through it. Big deal. Grand Central Gate and the World Trade Center portals are open all the time. Nita groaned again. Mars! Each of those gates took 100 or so wizards working together to open, though. Kit leaned back on the steps. She may be a brat, but, boy, has she got firepower. The youngest wizards always do, Nita said, sitting up again and picking up Kit's manual from beside her. Lord, what a horrible thought. What, the gate she made? We could close it, but no, this. Look. She held out his manual. It was turned to one of the directory pages. The page said, Callahan, Juanita T., 243 East Clinton Avenue, Hempstead, New York, 11575, 516-555-6786. Journeyman rating, RL plus 4.5 plus or minus 0.15. Available, limited, summer vacation. That was Nita's usual directory listing and normal enough, but above it, between her and Kahane Jack, whose listing was usually right above hers, there was something new. Callahan, Dairine E., 243 East Clinton Avenue, Hempstead, New York, 11575, 516-555-6786. Novice rating, RL plus 9.8, plus or minus 0.2. On ordeal, no calls. Oh, no, Kit said. And look at that rating level. Nita dropped the book beside her. I don't get it. She didn't find a manual. How could she have... She was in yours, Kit said. Yeah, but the most she could have done was take the oath. She's smart, but not smart enough to pull off a 49-million-mile transit without having the reference diagrams and the words for the spell in front of her. And the manuals can't be stolen, you know that. They just vanish if someone tries. Nita put her head down in her hands again. My folks are going to pitch a fit. We've got to find her. Kit breathed out, then stood up. Come on, he said. We'd better start doing things fast or we'll lose her. There's a phone over there. Call home and tell them we're running a little behind schedule. The planetarium's all locked up by now, so No one will be around to notice if I walk through a couple of walls and close that gate down. But what if she tries to come back and finds it closed behind her? Somehow I can't see that slowing her down much, Kit said. And besides, maybe she's supposed to find it closed. She is on ordeal. Nita stood up, too. And we better call Tom and Carl. They'll want the details. Right. Go ahead. I'll take care of the gate. Kit turned around, looked at the bricks of the planetarium's outer wall. He stepped around the corner of the doorway wall, out of sight of the street, and laid one hand on the bricks, muttering under his breath. His hand sank into the wall, as if into water. There we go, he said, and the bricks rippled as he stepped through them, and vanished. Nita headed for the phone, feeling through her pockets for change. The thought of her sister running around the universe on ordeal made her hair stand up on end. No one became a wizard without there being some one problem that their acquisition of power would solve. Nita understood from her studies that normally a wizard was allowed to get as old as possible before being offered the oath. The powers, her manual said, wanted every wizard who could to acquire the security and experience that a normal childhood provides. But sometimes, when problems of an unusual nature came up, the powers would offer the oath early, because the younger children, not knowing or caring what was impossible, had more wizardry available to them. That kind of problem was likely to be a killer. Nita's ordeal and Kit's had thrown them out of their universe into another one, a place implacably hostile to human beings and run by the power that, according to the manual, had invented death before time began, and therefore had been cast out of the other powers' society. Every world had stories of that lone power, under many names. Nita didn't need the stories. She had met it, face to face, twice now, and both times only luck, or the intervention of others, had saved her life. And Nita had been offered her wizardry relatively early, at 13, Kit even earlier, at 12. The thought of what problem the powers must need solved if they were willing to offer the oath to someone years younger, and the thought of her little sister in the middle of it. Nita found some quarters, went to a phone, and punched in her number. What was she going to tell her mother? She couldn't lie to her. That decision, made at the beginning of the summer, had caused her to tell her folks that she was a wizard and had produced one of the great family arguments of her life. Her mother and father still weren't pleased that their daughter might run off anywhere at a moment's notice to places where they couldn't keep an eye on her and protect her. Nor did it help that those places tended to be the sort where anyone but an experienced wizard would quickly get killed. That made it even worse. At the other end, the phone rang. Nita's throat seized up. She began clearing it frantically. Someone answered. Hello? It was Dayreen. Nita's throat unseized itself. Are you all right? Where are you? She blurted, and then began swearing inwardly at her own stupidity. I'm fine, Dayreen said, and I'm right here. How did you get back? Never mind that. How did you get out? And you left the gate open. Do you know what could have happened if some poor janitor went in that door without looking? It's 60 below this time of year on Mars. Nita, Dayreen said, you're babbling. Just go home. I'll see you later. And she hung up. Why, that rotten little... Nita said, and hung up the phone so hard that people on the street corner turned to look at her. Embarrassed and more annoyed than ever, she turned and headed back to where Kit was sitting. Babbling, she muttered. That rotten, thoughtless... I'm gonna... She shut her mouth. Babbling? That didn't sound like Dayreen. It was too simple an insult. And why just go home instead of just come home? There's something wrong. She stopped in front of Kit, who looked up at her from his seat on the step and made no move to get up. He was sweating and slightly pale. That gate was fastened to Mars real tight, he said. I thought half of Mariner Plain was going to come with it when I uprooted the force fields. What's the matter with you? You look awful. Something's wrong, Nita said. Dayreen's home. What's awful about that? Good riddance. Then he looked at her sharply. Wait a minute. Home? When she's on ordeal?